All right, moving along. So we've created 2 albums, and you'll remember in this prior session we showed that the titles were different. We have, or the album 1 artist. So if we go back in, what we ran out of time for was showing that the titles are different for the albums. So I can look at album. This is the title of Mignonette 2. If I look at album 2, I overrode it with different. Okay, so this allows us to have a default, but I can also override if I want to have some more explicit testing. That's pretty exciting. Let's get in the same pattern where we get rid of the active record syntax. We're going to create a genre. It is a symbol, and I want to give it a name of R&B to start with. Go ahead, we've got some reps, feeling comfortable. Let's see our error for undefined factory genre, factory not registered. So we're going to go back to our touch command. We're going to add a genres RB. Okay. Here we will copy that to genres. And it looks like we are expecting a name. So let's go ahead and again start front loading that. This is a factory for genre that has a name. And just for practice, let's go ahead and set up this to be folk with the integer. Yeah, let's actually look real quick at the genre model, see if we have any validations. We validate the uniqueness of name. So yep, we're going to want that sequence. And it looks like it also has many tracks, but we'll get into the has many relationships later on. So we've created the genre. Let's run our test again. Cool. Awesome. And just again to make the point here that we are getting we have a fallback plan for the genre, but we're overriding, in this case, the genre's name will come out as RB. Say genre, we have R&B. Let's go ahead and delete that name. Just go with the default again, because in this case, we just want it to be a valid record. Exit, run the tests again. Beautiful. At this point, we're just cleaning things up. Not clear why we need a genre yet until we get down to these track creations. So this is where we're going to see this beautiful cleanup. We've already cut one line from the artist, and now we're going to really start to make pretty things here. So below track 1, let's say track 1. Let's dream drive this a little bit. We're going to say create track. And the main thing that has to differentiate here for the album test, as we can see here, we are specifying the album is album, album is album, album is album 2. Okay, so we want to make 3 tracks with the album album and 1 track with the album 2. So in this case, the only thing that I really need to differentiate from the factory itself will be the album. So I'll override that with album here. Okay. And this allows me to or let's leave this now in case we want some values, or delete this one. You can use the others as examples. Run the tests. What error is this? But an unregistered factory track. Cool, so let's add that. Add tracks, RB. Is set up tracks. Here we have a factory track, and a track has looks like a name. Let's go ahead and pull up the track model. There are no uniqueness problems, so let's just go ahead and have them all called name. We'll just have all the same name. So clean this up. Let's say jam. I'm like super creative sometimes. Cool, so we have a name, and if we go back to what we're passing, what we're using to create it, we also need a genre, which is an association. We need an album, which will create an album factory. we need a media type, and we need milliseconds. Let's actually just put that up here. Milliseconds, say it's 10. And that looks about good. So let's see. So prime here. That test. A little bit of an error. Ooh, so name has already been taken. I have to assume that we're running into some type of similar issue so that we ran into before, right? Because track doesn't have a uniqueness thing tied to it. Genre. Let's look at genre, okay? So before we realized when we were doing with albums that we had the unique title, but it was saying it had already been taken. So we had to go into artists actually and sequence that name. So let's look at genre, which is also being sequenced. Media types. I think this needs to be unique. To verify, let's go into the media type RB, validates uniqueness of name. So this must also be sequenced. So we sequence name to I, and you can get more creative than me if you want. And awesome. So we run this test again. I'll come back to the track factory, tracks. Cool. And we got into the pry, which is great. So what I wanted to show is that track 1 has that default jam. It has a media type. It has an album ID. It has milliseconds 10. So again, super clean setup. Look at this line, create track with album versus track 2, right? This creation, whole lot of description, and I broke it on 2 lines to make it more readable, but you can imagine if it's like this, you're like, what is even going on? Why am I looking at all this? So let's go ahead and delete this as well. Make a second track, track 2. And yep, we want the same thing tied to that album. Go ahead and exit this. Make sure we are still green. Awesome. So this is another track that we want to have with album. So let's go ahead and R3. Okay. And that. Cool. And at this point, we can, to differentiate and still make the test pass, differentiate the fact that we are only calling tracks associated with a given album. Let's create one more track with the album 2. Meet the rest of this. Awesome. And we can actually see the end of the test now. Amazing. Cool. So what we found there, let's go ahead and undo that. The reason we made genre up here and media type up here was to actually put it in this factory. But since we're making factories by default here, we can now get rid of genre. We can get rid of media type. We can get rid of this like we already had. And now these equal signs look all crazy lonely. Same thing. Cool. So we've created albums. We have tracks. Let's go ahead and put this all together. Create one track, album 2. I would expect the track total count to be 4 and the album's track count to be 3. Lovely. Look at that. Can we run all the way back? Let's see how far back the buffer goes. Oh, very cool. So it doesn't go all the way back, but again, we're just cutting lines, like just this like fast forward review, yearbook status. Amazing, right? So now we're just saying create all these tracks with the album. And now I'm tempted to say, well, hey, this is super repetitive. I created one album and then another, and then I create 3 tracks with exactly the same logic. So let's go ahead and try to take a break because we hit our 10 minutes, and we'll come back to set up an association with that factory.